recording in 5, 4, 3.
Thank you for joining us for Conversations in Authenticity. I'm Dr. Walter Bro.
I'm Andrea Reese.
And today we're going to talk about being authentic within social settings, within relationships, and how does an individual maintain their sense of authenticity when trying to be relational. Andrea.
Yes.
What are your thoughts about authenticity in relationship to, relationships and social settings?
I feel that authenticity is something that takes a lot of awareness and self-awareness, but in a group, it also takes an awareness of those other people that are in the group and an appreciation for them and what everything means in the moment. And as the relationship progresses and everything about it, it has to really to be taken into account for you to really be authentic and not kind of project either what they want or what you want them to believe.
Okay, I agree with that. I use the word relational a lot, and I think it's really because I think of people relating in that here and now moment, and as that moment changes, you have to be able to kind of keep up and keep pace with people in relationship. I think part of the challenge in doing that, though, is we kind of lose a sense of who we are, who we want to be in that moment as new happenings occur. What are your thoughts about that?
As everything happens to us as, authentic individuals, it like you said, it changes from time to time, from moment to moment. And if we're not aware of it, we'll just go with the flow. We'll just kind of do what we want to do or what we think is the right thing to do.
Sure.
But I think it takes a certain amount of courage to really not just go along with that. You know, is that kind of what you mean?
Right.
Like
Definitely.
that courage. That's my take on it. Like, to be authentic in a group takes a lot of courage. To know that you could stand alone, but you're making a conscious effort to be who you are in the group. I think that takes courage.
That's interesting. We were talking earlier, and you talked about courage, and I actually looked it up on the iPad before we started.
Okay.
And the etymology, the actual root of it, means heart.
Okay.
It's the seat of feelings. So when you hear that piece, that courage really relates to the heart, the seat of our feelings. What are your thoughts about authenticity then?
Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is, Brene Brown and, her Ordinary Courage and her The Gifts of Imperfection book. Yes. She talks a lot about saying all of one's mind as being courage and at the seat of the heart. So in dealing with groups and other people, it takes a special awareness to be able to communicate what's really on my heart in a way that will be receptive. It's more important in being authentic to be received than to just spit it out the way you want to by how you've been shaped to spit it out.
Wow.
So if I want to really convey to you my heart and what's really in my heart in a way that you will understand, it's my responsibility to figure out and to, decide the way to do it that will be most impactful. Because if not, I shut you down. Because whatever defenses you have, if I'm not aware of it, I completely shut you down if I just shoot at you with something that's a projection of what I feel I need to do as opposed to what you will receive.
That's very insightful. I hear a couple of things. First, I hear that it's really important that we're authentic because it's really important that we share our emotions or share our feelings with people. I hear another piece where we have to consider the audience or consider who we're speaking to and in the moment, consider how authentic or who in our authenticity we're going to be. It's interesting because at some level, it almost sounds like if we're not successful in communicating who we are authentically to people, we've actually failed at being authentic. Wow. So,
I agree.
Yeah, you agree? Okay. So what are your thoughts about that? That we could actually fail in being authentic when trying to be authentic by not considering who we're speaking to and how we're being received?
Well, my thoughts on it, because for a long time, just personally, I always felt if you don't say exactly what you want to say, when you want to say it, the time you want to say it, and the way you're feeling it, then you're not being authentic. But I constantly got backlash. Nothing was received. What I really wanted to convey, what I really felt, how everything was completely framed in another way because of the way I presented it, because of the way I tried to go about saying things or doing things. It was not received. And so I was presenting myself what I thought to be authentically, but the true message and what I was trying to present was completely obscured. It was completely set to the side. So my authentic self was unable to be seen because of, you know, my cultural training or lack thereof.
Sure.
So not being sensitive to the other person made me inauthentic because they couldn't see it anyway. I was trying to show them something that they couldn't see because of me.
Now, I mean, when you talk about that, I kind of relate in the sense that when I'm in those moments where I might miss being authentic, it's really because at some level I'm really being authentic to another self. I'm attending to another self, another need in that moment. Is that something you can also see? That at some level we can be authentic to a hidden or subconscious need or something that's under the surface and maybe not part of that social setting in the moment?
Yes, I agree, because one of my professors was talking about a situation where they were in a meeting. You know, they were going about, you know, something that they really wanted to say in that moment, but they didn't say it. And, you know, other professors were around. The person that they could have directed it to, you know, they had a higher type of status. So in that moment, they attended to being the professional.
Okay.
They attended to, that self that they attended to was the self that's, you know, the professional, that's the director, that's, you know, the to-do person. You know, they attended to that self as opposed to whatever might have been on their mind and heart, you know, from what they said that they wanted to have said. So you attend to whatever self that you want to project at that time, unless you're aware of it and you're able to merge those two selves.
Wonderful. So I actually hear that not attending to the here and now moment socially, but attending to another self is not necessarily a negative thing. Because actually by attending to that professional self, that professor was actually being very authentic, very true to self, and actually attending to the social setting in a positive way instead of causing disruption. Yeah.
It's not that he did something wrong.
Right.
It's just that in that moment, it just I don't know. I don't see it as something that was wrong, but I do see it that if those two cells would have been more merged, then it may not have seemed like a disruption, but he would have been capable and creative and able enough to navigate that in there if you know, the situation permitted. Because like I said before, it is about the audience. It is about giving yourself to these people to a place where they'll receive it.
Right.
But I think if we understand that there are many selves and we try to merge them together to where, you know, they simultaneously work, then it's easier to not just attend to oneself and feel as if you did not say something or feel as if you did not do something, because you'll know that with every part of my being, I was present.
Wow.
The person within me and the professional were present at the same time. So I had the conviction enough to say it, but I knew how to at least make a way for some kind of way. I would not have felt any regret leaving that room because I was fully merged.
Yeah. Now, when you talk about the many selves, it's almost like a gestalt focus, looking at the whole self and the many cells that make up the whole conscious.
Yes.
Now, what you're saying at some level is that by attending to a personal self and a professional self and being aware of those two selves at least, and the many other selves, we're actually more able to be authentic and be in a healthier place versus someone who might not attend to another self because they don't trust that other self.
Yes.
They have unresolved issues with the past self or something. That's a brilliant point to bring up.
Yeah, with another piece of myself. I don't trust that guy to be here right now. I have to trust this guy. But if we can push both of these guys together, that wholeness, you know, and give the power to the people, you know, kind of when we project something or when we place ourselves as whatever we want the picture to be, we take the people's power. Like, no, you're going to believe what I want you to believe about me. Now, if there's another part of me, you don't need to see that right now. Because, you know, we haven't merged them, but if we merge them and refine all ourselves in a way to where I can show them to you at all times, then we give people back their power to decide, okay, you might not be all of what I want, but then it gives us the option to be like, well, if I'm not, I'm confident enough in who I am to where I know I know that I'll be confident in myself. I know I'll be able to do this. I know I'll be able to impact. I know I'll be able to do all these different types of things because I know my whole self is good enough and is merged and is aware enough to do, to be my authentic self at all times.
So it's like taking an opportunity, and by taking that opportunity in our own lives, we give people permission to take other opportunities to be authentic also. Wow. I like this conversation
Yeah.
piece. Because when I think about counseling, I think it's really important that we're authentic and we're very aware of who we are in the moment and what self we bring to our clients' needs. As a counseling intern, how are you seeing that process form for yourself, the authentic self as clinician and also the authentic self as Andrea, and who you always have known yourself to be in that merging of selves? How's that?
I really like what I'm becoming because it's a process, because at first you think, as a counselor, I have to be this professional, be the person that my professor was speaking of. And in certain settings, when I'm in there with a client, I have to be this person. And, and I was actually in a session when I don't need, one of my clients, I don't need a counselor to tell me how to fix my problems or to tell me how to do A, B, C, D, and E. I said, I'm not here to tell you how to do anything, And in that moment, it was like, I felt like I don't have to just sit in this seat of power that people are giving me. I can be myself enough to help facilitate their growth, give them back their power.
How about it?
And so being authentic enough to know how to set my boundaries, know how to be professional, know how to have the authority of my assuredness, and, kind of allow them to grow themselves and just kind of help them facilitate the process through my knowledge and through my experiences as a person, because, they say don't self-disclose, and I'm not big on just self-disclosing, but at some point you have to disclose who you are.
Exactly.
And by the way that you speak, by the way that you talk, just by you being that person there. So if you're afraid to merge them, then they're going to be really afraid to grow themselves because they see you as somebody that's behind this big black, like the Wizard of Oz.
Definitely behind
I
the
think
curtain.
about the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
He's behind the curtain. There's this big white face and smoke and mirrors and all this, that, and the other. So I don't really know who he is. So that's kind of how I process
That's a perfect
that.
analogy, actually. I mean, because there's a modeling here, and you think of the Wizard of Oz being the model or role model for all of Oz. And at the heart of the wizard, he really didn't trust self. He didn't feel an innate value for self and who he was. He felt like a fraud.
Yeah.
And so that feeling of being a fraud or being inauthentic, I think is something everyone is challenged with, but it's really about how we manage it. Wow. Well, I think that's a pretty insightful piece for us to stop with, because I want to continue this conversation and talk more about being authentic within families. And within our more personal roles instead of just the professional too. So why don't you take us out and we'll join back and talk about that.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us for Conversations on Authenticity. We really hope that you stay tuned and join us again for another segment. You all have a great day, and we'll see you again on CSU TV.